Welcome to the Fishbowl. I'm Jade, and first and foremost, thank you for giving me your time because time is one thing people can never get back. And the fact that you chose to spend a piece of yours here with me tonight truly means something. So before we begin, go ahead and put on your scuba gear because here at the Fishbowl, we do not stay on the surface. We dive deep into the conversations people think about privately, but rarely say out loud. And tonight's conversation is called The People We Entertain But Would Never Marry. And if we are being honest tonight, a lot of people already know the difference between someone they truly see a future with and someone they are simply entertaining, sometimes within weeks, sometimes within months, and psychologically, that is uncomfortable for people to admit because it forces people to confront intention. Because there are relationships people build futures around, and then there are connections people hold on to for loneliness, intimacy, convenience, financial comfort, validation, stability, or simply because they do not want to be alone. And socially, many people stay in situationships far longer than they should, not because they genuinely see forever with the person, but because the connection temporarily fills an emotional void. And that is where things become complicated because people are not always dating for the same reasons. Some people date for partnership, while others date for distraction, healing, attention, survival, or comfort. And one of the hardest truths to admit is that sometimes people stay with individuals they already know they would never marry because familiarity can feel safer than uncertainty, and loneliness can make temporary connections feel deeper than they actually are. But tonight, I want to talk about commitment from a different perspective because I personally believe if people can commit to a 30-year mortgage, they can commit to marriage. And I know that perspective may offend some people, but hear me out. When you buy a home, you understand immediately that commitment comes with responsibility. Things will break, things will need repair, maintenance is required, effort must stay consistent. Money must be invested, and if the home is neglected long enough, the value begins to decrease. The structure weakens, the appearance changes, and eventually the neglect becomes visible. And honestly, relationships work the same way. Because love is not just chemistry, it is maintenance, it is patience, communication, emotional upkeep, repair, and choosing somebody repeatedly even after the excitement settles. Because healthy relationships require accountability, structure, effort, and intentional care. But we live in a culture now where people love the idea of connection more than they love the responsibility of maintaining one. People want intimacy without sacrifice, partnership without accountability, comfort without commitment. And when relationships stop feeling exciting, many emotionally check out instead of repairing what became neglected. And another uncomfortable truth is this: many people know very early whether somebody feels temporary or whether somebody feels like peace, like alignment, like home. And I remember being on the dating scene myself, and there were times I already knew the difference. I knew when somebody was simply being entertained and when somebody had qualities I could genuinely build a future with. And that honesty matters because leading people on while already knowing you do not truly see forever with them creates emotional damage. But this conversation also requires compassion because people settle for many reasons: fear of loneliness, financial dependence, children, routine, emotional attachment, stability, intimacy, social pressure, or simply because starting over feels terrifying after investing years into somebody. And psychologically, people often become attached to familiarity instead of compatibility. They confuse history with destiny, comfort with love, and attachment with alignment. But real commitment is deeper than attraction. It is emotional responsibility. It is saying, I am willing to protect what we are building together. And maybe that is why so many relationships struggle now, because people are dating emotionally unavailable individuals while expecting emotionally secure outcomes. People are entering commitments without first understanding themselves. And some people want wedding days more than they want healthy marriages. But healthy love requires maintenance, just like home ownership. Because if you stop nurturing it, stop investing in it, stop appreciating it, stop protecting it, the value slowly decreases. And now, let's talk about the other side of commitment. Because while some people are afraid of marriage, others have already walked down the aisle, already made vows, already committed their lives, and already experienced the heartbreak of watching something they once believed in fall apart. And for some people, that heartbreak comes with another layer, the shame attached to the word divorce, the awful D word, because socially, people often treat divorce like failure, like if something ended, then somehow the love was not real, the effort did not matter, or the commitment meant nothing. But tonight, I want to challenge that perspective too, because just because something did not last forever does not mean it had no value. And ending something unhealthy does not automatically make somebody a failure, especially if they tried, especially if they fought for it, especially if they stayed longer than they should have, hoping things would improve. Because there are people who gave everything emotionally, trying to save marriages that were already collapsing behind closed doors. And society romanticizes staying without asking what people are actually surviving inside those relationships. Because not every marriage ends because people stopped loving each other. Sometimes emotional safety disappears. Sometimes communication dies. Sometimes respect fades. Sometimes betrayal changes everything. And sometimes people become so emotionally exhausted trying to hold everything together that walking away becomes an act of survival instead of selfishness. And I personally believe this. If you walked away from something that was destroying you mentally, emotionally, or spiritually, then good for you, because protecting your peace is not weakness. And leaving does not always mean somebody quit. Sometimes leaving means somebody finally chose themselves after losing themselves for too long. And there is a quote that always stayed with me. You've got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away, and know when to run. And honestly, that applies to relationships too, because wisdom is knowing the difference between a relationship that needs repair and one that is slowly destroying your spirit. And psychologically, many people stay in unhealthy marriages because they are afraid of judgment, afraid of disappointing family, afraid of financial instability, afraid of loneliness, afraid of starting over. And so they remain emotionally trapped in situations that no longer feel healthy, loving, connected, or peaceful. And over time, people can become emotionally numb inside relationships they once prayed for. And another thing people rarely discuss is how divorce can affect identity. Because after years of being somebody's husband, wife, or partner, people suddenly have to rediscover who they are outside of the relationship. And that can feel terrifying, especially when society subtly treats divorced people like damaged goods. But let me say this clearly tonight. You are not ruined because a relationship ended. You are not less valuable because somebody could not love you correctly. And you are not a failure because you had the courage to leave something unhealthy. Because honestly, some people stay married forever and remain unhappy forever, while others walk away, heal, rediscover themselves, and finally experience peace for the first time in years. And maybe the deeper lesson is this: relationships are not successful only because they lasted. Sometimes success is found in the lessons learned, the growth gained, the boundaries developed, the healing that followed, and the courage to stop abandoning yourself just to maintain appearances. Because society celebrates weddings loudly, But people heal from divorces quietly. And maybe we need more honest conversations about what emotional survival actually looks like after love changes. Because commitment is beautiful, but so is knowing when something is no longer healthy for your mind, your heart, your peace, or your future. And maybe the real goal is not simply finding somebody to marry. Maybe the real goal is finding somebody willing to grow, repair, communicate, evolve, and maintain life with you honestly. Because attraction may bring people together, but intentional maintenance is what keeps people connected. And maybe love was never supposed to just feel exciting. Maybe real love is supposed to feel safe enough to build a life inside of. This has been the Fishbowl with Jade. Thank you for diving deep with me tonight. And remember, stay classy, stay curious, and stay ever evolving. The Fishbowl with Jade is streamed on Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Spotify, YouTube, and iHeart.